Hello, and welcome. Welcome to today's podcast, today's YouTube, wherever you are watching this, listening to this, welcome back. So, let me preface this with, I absolutely love the Roth TSP. And I'm sure you've heard me talk about it. I love it. It is an incredible tool for federal employees. Now, you probably saw the title and saw, the title is When You Shouldn't Use the Roth TSP. So, with all that being said, the Roth TSP is a great tool, but just like any tool, just like a hammer, a saw, anything, it is a great tool when you use it for what it's meant to do. But if you try to hit in a nail with a saw, then you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle. And that is because you're not using the tool how it was meant to be used, and in its ideal way. So the same applies with the Roth TSP. It's a powerful tool when it makes sense for you, but let's dig into some of the scenarios when it might not make sense and when you might be better off doing something else. But if it does make sense, all power to you. We'll touch on when it does make sense too, because if it does, it can be an incredible way to lower your taxes into retirement, because we definitely need as much of that as we possibly can. So let's dig right in. Okay, so just to do a quick recap, let's get the basics out of the way. So the Roth TSP and the traditional TSP. You might already know this, but let's talk about the basics. What's the difference? The only difference is when you pay taxes. Okay, with the Roth TSP, you pay taxes today. And then down the road, whatever that money does in that account, as it grows, as it doubles, as it grows in the investments, anything you take out, assuming you meet all the rules with the Roth TSP, all that money plus all the money it grew to comes out tax-free. Awesome, awesome, awesome. With the traditional TSP, the normal one where most people put their money, today you don't pay taxes. You actually get a tax deduction for that money. Let's say you make $100,000 and you put $10,000 into the traditional TSP. Well, you only get taxed on $90,000, as if you only made $90,000. That's a simplified tax example, but that's basically how it works. You get a tax deduction today, but you push taxes down the road. So let's say that $10,000 that you put in the TSP, over the next 30 years, let's say it grew to $50,000. Well, then when you take that $50,000 out, you're going to pay taxes on the full $50,000. The $10,000 that you originally put in and the $40,000 that it grew to, you're going to pay taxes on all of it. So that's the main difference. If you check out the article that I wrote along with this video, go to my website, hit blog if you're listening or watching this video close to when it was published, then the blog will be right at the top. Just check it out. I have an example of seeds and a farmer where it can be a good way to visualize how this works. Where basically when farmers plant, they have seeds, right? They plant with seeds. And when you're deciding whether to use the traditional TSP or the Roth TSP, basically that's the same question. Okay, you have the seed money, and the question is, do you give a portion of the seeds you'd grow with right now, or do you want to give a portion of your harvest down the road? And it's a hard question to answer because you don't know all the details, right? But basically, let's say you have 100 seeds. You can choose to give 10% of those seeds today, or you can let all of the seeds grow and then give 10% of your harvest down the road. So what's better off, right? And there's lots of pros and cons either way, but that's what we're going to talk about. So, in a very simplified world, the times when you should not invest in the Roth TSP is when your income is high and you're close to retirement. Let me tell you why. When your income is high, your tax bracket is high. And for every dollar you put in the Roth TSP instead of the traditional TSP, you're going to pay taxes on that. And first, can you afford that? Let's say you were putting $10,000 a year in the traditional TSP, and you listen to one of my articles about the Roth TSP, you're like, wow, that's a great option. Let's take that $10,000 we put in the traditional TSP and let's put that into the Roth TSP this next year. Well, you do that. Well, you're going to pay taxes on $10,000 extra of income, which, depending on how much you make, could be a substantial amount. You have another $3,000 to pay in taxes, right? It depends. And so if your income is super, super high, it may not make sense. The reason I say may not and not always doesn't is because in retirement, what are you going to pay? Because when you use a traditional TSP, you don't get rid of taxes, you just push taxes. You delay taxes. And what is your taxable bracket? What's your tax bracket down the road in retirement? Now that's the question you want to answer, right? But in general, when you make lots and lots of money at the end of your career, your income's high, that the incentive to use a Roth TSP decreases. Let's say you only have 5 years till retirement. Well, if you use the Roth TSP, then your money has those 5 years to grow. But let's say you put $200 in, it may only grow to $300, right? But let's say you put that same amount of money in when you're 20, well, that $200 you put in the Roth TSP now grew to $1,000, and that's all tax-free. So the longer you have to put money in the Roth TSP and let it grow, the more powerful that tax-free money will be in retirement. So again, these are oversimplified because I want to kind of give you an idea of when it might not make sense to use the Roth TSP, but make sure you look at your situation. Look at your situation and see what makes sense. Look at your tax bracket right now. Check out what it'll be in retirement, and then see if you're paying more now or later, and what these choices might do to it, okay? But as a general rule, like I said, if you make tons of income and you're close to retirement, it may not make sense. Now, with the Roth TSP, there's a 5-year rule too, and you can't touch it till 59 and a half. So there's lots of nitty-gritty rules here that you want to make sure you know before you get involved in the Roth TSP. It's less known than the traditional TSP, so just make sure you understand the ramifications. So, and basically to do the converse, the opposite of what I just told you, when it makes the most sense, when you get the most benefits out of using the Roth TSP is when your income is relatively low. Let's say you're starting your career and your income is relatively low compared to what it will be, let's say down the road in your career and in retirement. Well, then if you put money in the Roth TSP, yes, you pay taxes today, but at a much lower rate than you will down the road. And down the road, you get to take all that money out tax-free. Plus, you have so much time to let that money compound and grow and grow and grow over the course of your career. So if you are young, you have lots of time for it to grow, and your income is relatively low compared to what it probably will be later and in retirement, well, that is stereotypically the best time to use the Roth TSP. But again, I want to always put an asterisk next to everything I say, this is what makes most of the time, what makes sense most of the time, but not all the time. Make sure you check out your situation. Make sure you think through and it makes sense for you. All the dots kind of line up and it makes sense for you. Don't just blindly take my advice. Don't blindly take the advice of anyone on the internet. Do the research and then apply that all back to your situation with a lens of, okay, for me, what does this mean? Does this make sense for me? Like I said, I love the Roth TSP, and I encourage my clients to use it as much as possible within reason. There is a cost to use the Roth TSP. It's not just oh yeah, you want to use it just because. It's, well, you use it, but there's a cost. You pay taxes now instead of later. And do you want that, right? And do you understand taxes and your income, all that stuff, enough to know what that actually means? So these are the sort of questions that I'd be asking yourself, maybe your accountant, maybe your financial planner, whoever, so that you can make the best decisions now and down the road. Because if you put all this energy up front, when I talk about all this, it may sound overwhelming. It may sound, wow, that is so much to think about. And sometimes it is, especially when this information is new. I remember when I first learned about all this stuff years ago, it's overwhelming sometimes to keep it all straight and to be able to apply it in your life. But by putting in the energy now to take action, to do something about it, then down the road it'll be so much less stressful because you went through and thought about it now, and then all those good decisions had time to compound. If you just delay, stress will build, anxiety is going to build, nervousness is going to build because you know you don't know all the details, right? And that could be stressful. So do whatever it takes to understand what you're doing now to set yourself up for success down the road, and you'll thank yourself a million times over. Okay, I hope this is helpful. Please, 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 please tell your federal employee friends, your family members about this podcast, this YouTube channel, so that they can get value as well. If you have found value in it, right? If you say, wow, this is helpful information that more people should know about it, please help me spread the word. I'm doing my best with what I can, but I need your help. If this is valuable for you, please share it. Please put a comment. Please subscribe. And we, as a community, will help federal employees, help you to get the most out of your benefits, to get the most out of your retirement. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.